All right, today we are moving on to our next lesson. This is from the 5A textbook, pages 5 through 14. We're actually going back to chapter 1 in this unit, and we are talking about writing and reading numbers. All right, and it sounds like it should be obvious, right? You're like, oh, that's the number 15. I know how to write that if I can spell it correctly, and that looks like, I can write it 1, 5, done, right? Sounds simple, but it's a little bit more complicated to this. We're going to be writing some notes first, talking about the different types or ways that you could write a number and how to read them, but also making sure it's correct. All right. So in your notes, we're going to put the date and our title, which is reading and writing notes or numbers. Excuse me. Reading and writing numbers. Okay, and if you'll see here in my example notes, I skipped a line, put the date, and put the title, right? And you just continue from there. You get to the bottom of the page. This is up to you. You can either use the back or just continue on to the next page itself. I would recommend if you're using pen to just use the front side because you don't want it bleeding through and then you can't read anything. But I will leave that up to you. Alrighty. So what we're trying to do is we're going to talk about standard form, word form, and expanded form in terms of being able to write numbers, right? So we're going to talk about some rules and some definitions there. So let's just start. First bullet point, talking about standard form. This is what we're used to. And so we're going to have a short definition for this. This is, where'd it go? Expressing a number using numerals. Which is just a fancy way of saying writing a number like you normally would. All right, we use Arabic numerals. That's where they come from. But I mean, there's other types of numerals, right? You might be familiar with Roman numerals. Imagine trying to do big math problems like a big fractions problem or a huge division problem using all of those, X, V, I, L, M. Maybe if we had done it and been, grown up with it, we'd have been used to it. But that just sounds so much more complicated than what we already have. All right, now with this in mind, there is really just one basic rule when writing in standard form. And that rule is to put a comma after every third place value. So we'll write this, commas are placed after every third place value. All right, so let me hold this up. Feel free to pause to be able to write that down. Okay. And so you'll see that you're writing, we got 10, 100,000, then comma, right? That was our third one. And then 1, 10, 100, then comma. Already getting it wrong myself. 1, 10, 100, then comma. And then 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, comma. And you just keep going. And every three place values, comma, right? Every time we go. Now next is word form. Okay, and there are some students who are like, why do we even have to learn this? It's not like we're writing down math problems in words. I already know how to read. I'm in 5th grade. That makes sense to me. And so a few applications for this. If this is probably less common, but if you want to be an author or even just write something, often you'll write, especially smaller numbers, in word form instead of number form. But the most specific one, and this will come up when we talk about financial literacy later in the year, is a practical everyday application is when you write a check. You're going to write it in both number form, standard form, I should say, and word form. And it's an extra layer of security, right? Because if you just wrote, a check for $100 and left it as it is, if there was room left, someone could try and steal some extra money by putting some extra zeros at the end or trying to mess with it. But if you have the word written out as well, that helps clarify and gives you an extra level of security. So that's kind of handy. So word form is exactly what it sounds like. It's expressing a number using words. Right? Hopefully very straightforward. Now this one has a few more rules. So I'm going to save that for my next part of my board because I'm running out of room. And so I'm just going to go ahead and hold that up. Go ahead and feel free to pause. Now, when I go on the next board, that doesn't mean skip a line. It just means I ran out of room. Okay, so just keep going down in your notes normally as it is. So let's talk about some rules. Okay, our first rule is the same rule we just wrote for standard form. It still applies in word form. Okay, commas are placed after every third place value. Okay, so if I was going to write the number 1,512, I would write the words 1,000, and then I would still put a comma, and then I'd write the words 512. Okay, and so that comma, it just if you're gonna have a comma there during standard form, you're also gonna have a comma there during word form. Okay, our next rule, and this is kind of a hard one to explain, and I'd rather show after we explain it, but here's our rule, is that you must put a dash or a hyphen, and it's in specific spots. So hyphens, right, or also known as a dash, are placed between the tens and ones place for numbers between, that kind of seems like a weird number, but I'll explain why, between 21 and 99. All right, that's true for the ones and tens place, 1,000s and 10,000s, 1 millions and 10 millions, etc. You're gonna put that hyphen there, and that's to combine two words that go together, right? So if I had like 13, that's just a solid word, so you're not gonna put thir-teen. That would look weird. All right, but if I had like 26, I would have to put a hyphen, 20-6, or 52, 50-2, right? I think the really only exception here is if it ends in a 0, you're just gonna write 50. You don't write 50-1000 or 50-million, right? Just if you're connecting, right, a tens or 10,000s or 10 millions, place one with a ones, place one, right? So I'll put an example here in our notes. If I was writing the number 63 in a word form, that would look like 60-3. Okay, so those are our rules there. So don't forget those hyphens in a word form. And again, feel free to pause to make sure you can get this down. Okay. Finally, we have expanded form, and then I'm going to give you a number in our final example that'll cover all three types. All right, so our last way to write a number is an expanded form. Okay, an expanded form is expressing a number by separating out each individual place value. Okay, and so I'm going to show you what that looks like in a second here. We're going to do an example. That's why I wanted us to learn place value first, because then we got to pull out the 1, right? The place and the value, the 1, and the 6 and the 10s, that'd be like 60, right? You got to pull each of those out, and it's going to be like a really long addition problem, all right? So let's do a number here. We're going to try one. It's relatively big. We'll go into the 100,000s. So here's our standard form. Okay, 472,315. When I write it in word form, I like to do it in those 3-digit chunks so I don't forget anything. Because I have plenty of students who would write that out and then forget the word thousand, or if it was in the millions, forget the word million. And then you're just telling me two numbers that are in the hundreds place for some reason without separating them out. All right, so let's look at word form. And that's going to be a little bit longer. So starting at our first section, we have 472. Let's write that out. 470. Now let's remember our rule. 70 is in the tens, or in this case, the 10,000s place. So we're going to want to dash after it because there's something in the ones place, or 1,000s place in this case after it. 72. Now we're not quite done. We said 472. That's our first three digits. It's in the thousands place, so we don't want to forget the word thousand. 472,000. And then just like in the number, in standard form, there's a comma, so we're going to put a comma. And then our last part is 315. 315. Okay, so that's what that would look like. 470-2,000, comma, 315. So that's standard in a word form. And then expanded form, we're going to spread that all out. Expanded. All right, our first digit is a 4 in the 100,000s place. So that would be 400,000 plus our next digit is a 7. That's in the 10,000s place. That's a mouthful. So we're going to put 70,000, right? 7 in the 10,000s place. Then we have 2 in the thousands place. So plus 2,000 plus, running out of room. Got to go to the next line. 300, right? 3 in the hundreds place, plus 1 in the tens place. That's just 10, plus 5 in the ones place, right? So that is expanded form. All right, so we've pulled out each place and value for each of the individual digits. And if we added those all up, we'd get our answer for standard form, right? They've just spread it all out. Now, I cannot think of an everyday application where that would be useful. But there are probably plenty, especially if you go further into mathematics. But it does help us practice place value, right, first and foremost. Okay. Now, that's it for our notes, but we're going to do a little bit of practice together. We're going to be working from pages 12 and 13, working on pages 11, or excuse me, questions 11 through 18. All right. So that looks like this in the textbook. All right, and if you'll see in our first question, they have something, these are place value charts, right? So you see it has all the way across ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. All right, so with that, we're going to have to write a number in standard in a word form using that. So what that is, we've got to count the number of chips in each space, right? So let's just start, we'll go left to right. Millions, this goes all the way up to millions. So this is a 7-digit number. There are 4 chips in the millions place. So in standard form, we are going to start with a 4. Now, because it's millions, after millions comes a comma. Next, we have 6 in the 100,000s place. Nothing in the 10,000s, so we're going to put a 0. And 5 in the thousands place. Then we have 3 in the hundreds place, 7 in the tens place, and 9 in the ones place, right? So that's what that chart would translate to, okay? So now they've asked us to put it in word form, okay? Our first digit is in the millions place. There are 4 of them, so we put 4 million. Then just like in standard form, we're going to put a comma. Next, let's just say that number, that's 605, and it's in the thousands. So 605,000. I often have students who make a mistake where they will write 600,000, 5,000, and you've repeated the 1,000, and that's not necessary, right? If we just read that number, those 3 digits together on their own, it would be the number 605, and then the 1,000 goes on the end. Right? And then just like in standard form, there's going to be another comma. And then we write what's left, which is 300,000. 79. And let's remember that the 79, we're going to put a dash there. The only reason we didn't have a dash in the thousands is because there was nothing in the 10,000s place, right? So that's number 11, right, from that place value chart that I quickly showed you. I'll give this a moment longer. For number 12, I want to show that place value chart. There it is. Feel free to pause if you want to take a look at it. And they want us to write that in standard in word form as well. Again, this is just me showing you problems. If we were in class, we would be working on these together. Obviously, we're not, and so it's just me kind of doing them for you and walking through the process. Okay, so let's start off with standard form. Now, again, they haven't asked for expanded form yet in this practice yet, so we'll see. Maybe we'll get to some that have that. We have standard form for that. First, we have a 6 in the millions place, comma. We have a 3 in the 100,000s, a 4 in the 10,000s, and nothing in the thousands, so we'll put 0. And another comma, we have 500s, 8 10s, and 1 1. All right, so there is our number. All right, so let's write it in word form. We have 6 million, and then comma, and then we have, if we just, again, read those 3 digits as they were, if they were their own number, 340, but then it's in the thousands place. Now, I want to point out we got the number, or we had to write the word 40, but there's no dash because there was nothing in the 1000s place. Okay. Then we have a comma. Our last 3 digits, 581. Now that one will have a hyphen between 80 and 1. So 580-1. Okay. There we go. Now, these next few, this would take us a long time, quite a bit of writing here. So I'm just going to show you the page, and if you want to get some extra practice on your own, go for it, but I'm not going to go through each and every one of these. All right, is on page 13, if you can see here, here are the problems where they ask you to write it in word form, numbers 13 through 18. Right, all of those are in the millions. They're very similar to the last 2 problems we've done. All right, so feel free to practice those on your own. I just gave that as a resource, but I'm not going to be going over them necessarily in this video. All right, for some additional practice, on page 14 in this book, they have some more where you're writing in standard and word form, although none in expanded form. So we might look at that in an additional lesson later. All right, so that should do it for now. Go ahead and feel free to practice that as we work both writing in standard and word form.